of UpStart in Chennai. I'm Mansa, I'm your host for the evening. PayU, as you all know, is one of the leading payment service providers. We are across sectors like airlines, SMBs, and of course the startup community. So UpStart in CodeUp is a series that we do under our startup outreach program. So UpStart is a series that we do for startup entrepreneurs with maybe in topics like marketing, sales, and of course like today's topic, product management. We have another series. Called CodeUp, and that is around topic like maybe a trending tech topic could be about when it is, that is blockchain. We talk about anything emerging tech and trends. That's how we try and cover all the important topics, be it startup topics or developer topics. A very small presentation on what we do and what we want to do around the partnership side as well. So we are a part of NASPERS, and PayU Global started in 2002 and PayU India we began in 2011. We are across 18 high growth markets. Our businesses, when it comes to for other business offerings, are PayU Based, PayU Money, PayU Now, and for consumers it is Lazy Pay and Citrus. So Citrus is a wallet and Lazy Pay is a buy now pay later option. So PayU Based, we are if you have seen, so that is like that is an enterprise solution. We are on Myntra, Foodpanda, all of the high and bigger enterprise solutions where when you're buying something, that's where like we come into place. PayU Money is for startups that we have an offering for SMBs as well. So we have like we are a robust payment gateway. We have some really good clients like that is Royal Brothers. They are South India's first bike rental company, and also others. We are across almost 4.5 lakh merchants are using us at the moment. PayU Now is it's for smaller merchants, it's for home entrepreneurs, it's for where you send in an invoice and get your payment right away. So when you do not have a website, we help you go online in just 2 minutes. So partnership opportunities, what I was talking about, we already have partners like 10K on NASPERM side, 91 Springboard, Shopify, and others. Our partnership happens with co-working spaces, incubators, other channel partners, MSME forums, and of course the government. If you are looking for any sort of payment, partnership opportunities, maybe you want to become a reseller on PayU Money or anything maybe, you can always write to us at partnerships@payu.in, and that's about it. So I would like to introduce Praveen. He's the founder of Startup Byte. He's our partner today, and he would like to say probably 1 or 2 minutes of your time if you would just have to say something.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. I'm from Hyderabad actually, so I'm here just for a couple of days. So I thought I'd just quickly introduce you about something that's relevant to all of you. So we are actually working on this company because right now when you go try to find anything around startup ecosystem, everything is disaggregated. There's no one single place to find the information, connect with others, and engage with everyone. So what we are trying to do is, instead of just trying to build a social network, we want to work with organizations like PayU, incubators, accelerators, and all, and work with them and help them build their communities and try to bring all of them together into one single place. So that way it's much easier for you to connect with each of these organizations and be part of their communities. Like they are doing a lot of things around product management. Again, so to quickly take you through, this is basically on the invite model. So this is the website. You can use this invite code to sign up. We just launched a couple of weeks ago. Already 600 plus people have signed up. We are onboarding incubators, accelerators, and all. If you don't mind, just can you quickly scroll? Oh, it is okay. So this way, what it is, it's all the different communities you're part of. You get it just like a social network feed. You can engage with the rest of them, ask your questions, interact with everyone else. Next one. See, you can browse different communities. Initially, we just kept some open communities, but we'll be working with each of these organizations to run their communities. Similarly, you can see the organizations and you can browse people. We have all the filters, incubators, accelerators, co-working, that is much easier. Even events and everything will come as we launch. So this is just one sample example. This way, PayU will have a number of communities as well that we can work with them and run on the platform. That way, at one single place, you get the meetup.com kind of effect, where you're engaging with the whole ecosystem at the same time being connected with all these and get going. Yeah, that's it. I don't want to take too much of your time because I'm not the right person right now. So this is my contact details. Anything else you need, I'll work with Mans as well to just share it along with each of you. You can just go to the website and sign up over here. We are looking at even doing a lot of things around the Chennai space with everyone.
Thank you, Praveen. So, without further delay, introducing our speakers for the evening. We have our first speaker, Kausikram Krishnasayee. He's the product manager at Orange Scope. And we have our second speaker, Rajendran Dandapani. He's the business solutions evangelist at Zoho Corporation. Our final speaker for the evening would be Nirmalkumar. He's the technical account manager at C1X. So, without further delay, calling upon Kaushik for his session.
Right. Hi everyone. My name is Kaushik. I'm the product manager for a product called KissFlow that we built from right here in Denmark. So today I am going to talk about product management anti-patterns. So before I actually jump into my talk, I just want to take a quick census on how we are today. So how many product managers are here today? Like actual product managers? Right, we've got one. And how many of you want to become a product manager? And how many engineers? Great, fair size of engineers over here. And the final question, how many of you come from engineering teams which are like having more than 20 members? More than 10 members? Right, mostly startups, yeah? Okay, how many startups here? Right, I will probably tune my talk on you. Great, so what I'm going to talk about is common product management anti-patterns. Anti-patterns as in things that that are going to happen when you actually start building your product as a product manager or as a founder, and things that will eventually lead to tricky situations down the line, right? I'm not going to give you answers to how to become a great product manager because this is something that all of us are figuring out, I'm still figuring out. But what I'll probably do is give you sleepless nights after looking at this presentation, and also probably give you a frame of reference based on which you can think on whether you're going along a path that is easy for you later on, or whether you're gonna end up with troubles later on, right? Right. So to the actual thing. All right. Before that, how many of you guys understand what an anti-pattern is? All right. We have one person saying he understands what an anti-pattern is. Anyone else? Right. Anti-patterns are things that you end up doing to solve a problem, which kind of solves the problem initially, but at the end of the day, it leads to more problems, right? So these are things that you will do to these are your jugards, the things that you will fix right away, but at the end of the day, at a later stage, it's going to end up creating a lot of problems for you. Right, so anti-pattern number one, taking too long to release, right? If you are building products, this is probably one of the most biggest problems that you will face. How does it manifest itself as? You have your stakeholders changing the roadmap of the product that you're building pretty often, right? This is while you're building your initial build, right? You have people coming and saying, oh, maybe, you know what, I think we can also build this together in our first release. Okay, I'm probably not happy with this, and let's actually do this. So, you get the general sense of what is happening. You have people changing maybe because of what you've done historically in your previous product or in your previous company. You're going to say, you know what, I don't want to incur all these technical debts later on. So I am going to go and and it's going to probably delay your release like crazy. Now, why does it matter? Why your first version of the product is going to get trashed, right? You go take your product to your initial, the ones who you think are your early adopters, they are going to give you feedback, and some of them will be extremely critical. The actual product that you will be building starts from the initial release, right? So that's when you actually are a product owner, you envision a product initially, but from the day your first release hits the market, that is when you actually start becoming a product manager. You start saying, okay, I can learn from this, I need to fix this, I should not be doing this more often. So yeah, you will get feedback, and the quicker you get these feedbacks, it's better. On the contrary, the second biggest anti-pattern is releasing too quickly, right? How does this manifest itself as? Not having a product vision at all. I mean, you come up with this brilliant idea when you're having a shower and you go convince your engineering, your management, your team, your stakeholders saying, you know what, we have this product gap, we need to build this to like bolster our product line. Bad idea. The second thing is, okay, maybe you actually gave enough thought and you have a proper product vision, but have you done your market and your competitor research? So I've been doing this with a bunch of my own colleagues, right? And the ones who are actually selling the product, and you go and ask them, you know what, list down all your competitors who are in this space, and it's very hard to get more than like a few names. I got, the last time I remembered, someone got like 8 of my 8 competitors' names out immediately, and after that, they were like all staring at us. And I have a list, an Excel which has around 25 people at least on my top-notch competitors, and like allied competitors who are a list which has around 50 names. Now the thing is, if you do your competitor and your market research, your product vision will also get refined. And finally, even after doing your research properly, after building a great product vision, what matters is how your initial feature mix is, right? What does that mean? Let me actually explain. There's this concept called user stories. How many of you are aware of it? User stories? Alright, brilliant. And you have something called a story map you build out of your user stories, right? This is something that Jeff Patton had like initially started off around like 8 years back, if I remember correctly. The concept is very simple. You take a board and you list down all your users' activities, your user stories, and you like categorize it into like 3 folds. So you have your main activities, which is the green cards. Then you have a backbone of all the sub-activities associated with your main activity, and you have like sub-tasks which are your yellow, right? In agile terms, not accurate, but kind of like close enough would be your greens will be your epics, your blues will be your features, and your yellows will be your tasks, right? Now, this is how your initial feature mix has to be. As in, when you're building a feature and when you're building a product and you're releasing initially, you get deep into solving one aspect of your user's problem. You do know and you have noted down that there are several other things that you need to do in order to make your product successful, but in your first version, make sure you get at least, you get deep on at least one aspect of your user's problem. However, what really happens is we get over-ambitious. We don't get deep on that one aspect. We end up like building like various aspects in a very shallow way. What's going to happen? Your adapters are not going to adopt. They are not going to be bought on like what you're offering. You need to have like a differentiator, and that is what this is. Right? So why again releasing very quickly? What happens? Again, you get trashed, but this time you get trashed really bad. Right? Oh, okay, yeah, that's your early adopter and your product. The third anti-pattern that happens, this is after you have like got your initial adopters and you have seen some sort of traction in your product. is when you start turning yourself into a feature factory. What does that mean? It means that you no longer go back and verify your initial story map that you have actually created. So you just say, okay, you know what, I've done the initial release. These are the other things that I need to do in order to get more people into the system. I just keep going and building on top of what I've actually planned, I don't know, a couple of months ago. Big problem, because the environment changes. There are competitors who are matching up. There are new competitors who are increasing, and the entire way your solution is being accepted by your customers change in itself. So it makes sense to constantly keep revisiting your entire story map, which is the scope of your product, and refining it. This happens. This is a more tactical thing that happens pretty much in a lot of organizations. You're in a hurry to get your features out, right? Because you are saying, more features, more customers come in. And what happens is you start releasing features and stop tracking their usage. You say, release feature 1, okay, get to feature 2. Release feature 2, get to feature 3. This is a proper feature factory where, you don't care about the outcome of or how the feature you just release affects your overall product. You just keep releasing features. And what does this mean if you keep releasing features like crazy pretty often? It means that at one point of time, your engineering head is going to walk up to you and say, you know what, I've incurred a lot of technical debt. I need to build from ground up again in order to solve, in order to have a more cleaner solution in place. So that means you're going to start working on the all new and improved versions, and it's going to keep rolling out pretty often. So it's going to keep. You're going to be building a lot of. There are going to be a lot of new versions coming up, and based on my experience, what I've seen is that on an average, if you make a new release, it takes around 2 years to get all your customers from one release to another. That is, if you care about maintaining all of your people in your own one release. If you don't, that's a bigger problem altogether. But yeah, on an average, try to keep at least 3 years spaces between releases in order to get things moving. And yeah, why does it matter? Why is it bad to have a lot of features being built in a feature factory sort of way? It means that you incur a lot of technical debt and you incur a lot of feature debt, which is a product management nightmare. The fourth is the complete opposite of what you've actually done, right? There are some philosophies, especially if you're in the open source market and you have a bunch of Linux-like systems saying, you know what, I would like to keep my functionality minimal, right? I'm not going to build anything else. I'm just going to make a very robust MVP, and my product is most likely going to be this way forever, right? That also has another problem. This is called Zavinsky's law of software. How many of you have heard about this? Okay. So Jamie Zawinsky is this guy who was part of the team that built the initial Mozilla Foundation. And one of the things he kept saying was, you know what? It's cool that you want to keep your software as minimalist as possible, but somehow or the other, if you do not keep building features into it, there's going to be another product that's going to come and take your place, which does what this feature you were supposed to build was not doing. Right? In common terms, back then, this was quoted around, I think, around the early 2000s, and email was a big thing, right? Gmail had still not come, and he was saying, you know what? If you're not, at the end of the day, if you do not do anything, there's going to be another browser that's going to come up, and it's going to have email support into it, and people are going to move because people care about email, and they want this basic functionality, and they want everything to happen in the same place, right? So it's counterintuitive to what I said previously, which says don't keep building features. what matters is to have like a curated set of features that you will always be working on, and to prune your feature list every now and then. That is to get rid of features that are not being used by your users or which are used by a very few users, right? The next problem is another favorite one of mine. You doing everything your customer asks for. We have seen multiple places. You have like user voices and other wish list items that most of the popular products have, where customers come and like request for a feature. Now that is a good thing and a bad thing together, right? I'll explain it with this thing called the Homer, right? This is based on the Simpsons cartoon. So what happens is there's this episode where Homer Simpson realizes that he has a half brother, and this half brother is this really rich guy, and he owns like a car manufacturing company. And he says, you know what? I want to build a car that the American common man needs, right? So he goes and talks to Homer and says, you know what, Homer, you work with my team and you build a car that that every average American needs, right? And here's what Homer Simpson's specifications for the car was. He said, you know what, I want a car where I can like see everything around me, right? And so give me a sort of like a glass bowl. Then you know what, I wanted to make a lot of noise, and I wanted to be mean and you know put a jetpack in the back. And then he says, but you know, when I'm driving, my kids keep making a lot of noise, and I don't want that. So you know, separate them and have a different glass wheel for them. And at the end, this is the kind of car that they end up making. You know, funny story, but this is what happens in real life as well when we are like building products. See, it's okay to go to your customers to ask for feedback, but customers know their problems well, but customers do not know what kind of solutions they need for their problems. That's your forte. That's your forte as a product manager. You go ask your customers what their problems are, keep asking why until you get to the core problem, and then go back to your drawing board and come up with a feature. Don't ask your customer, hey, you know what do you want? The customer is going to say, you know, I need a way to like print. And you go ahead and like give a print button. Maybe what he needs is a way to like document all his entries which were created in a system. So a common document repository would have been the actual need which he was trying to solve. But he says, I want print, and you go give print, and that's a feature that only that customer is going to use and no one else is. The seventh one is something that you start doing once you realize that traction for your product has actually started falling. You say, you know what, I forgot about how to get my users onboarded. I built this great product, but users are not using it any longer. So I'm just going to go and like create a team which is going to take care of like onboarding users. I'm going to build onboarding features right into my product. Right? It's a bad idea. Second thing is, once you start building products and once you start shipping features, you also start tracking numbers on like the features usage. However, what's going to happen is at one point of time you're going to say, you know what, I'm kind of busy. Why don't I like offload it to a business analyst who's going to come and like give me reports every now and then on like how my usage is. Bad idea, because you're the one who built the feature. You're the one who knows what to look out for. The business analyst is going to give you a report. It's very difficult to read into a report rather than doing that analysis yourself. And you start speaking to customers only after you've actually released the product. That's also kind of like a bummer. You want to start speaking to customers as soon as you start visualizing what you intend to do. You know, take wireframes, go talk to potential customers, say, you know what, this is what we are planning to do. What do you think about it? Ask for feedback, and then like refine your features so that it matches. Going to the customer after you release saying, why are you not using this feature is kind of like sad. And finally, this is the one which hurts the engineers pretty bad. Running a team based on consensus. Anti-pattern number one, your engineers are the ones who actually decide when you're going to say this. You actually go say, you know what, I want to build this huge set of features and go take it to your engineer, and the engineer says, tough, okay, small, large, Excel, I'm going to release all these first and then I'm going to release all this, right? That might not be the actual priority that you are envisioning, right? So it is very important to have the upper hand, not go confront, but negotiate with your engineering team. Be aware of their technical problems, but also put your foot down saying, this is the way I want the features to release. This is the way I want the product to roll out, right? Next one is your top management coming and like meddling around saying, you know what, this product is good, I need to acquire more customers from like a sister domain, so why don't you actually build this feature as well? You need to be very careful again. It might make sense, it might not make sense, but be careful on like losing focus on your product. And finally, this one also happens, especially if you are building products, software products, and you have this huge deal that's come up, and your sales guy comes and says, you know what, $1 million will be in our pocket tomorrow if you actually build me this feature. It's going to tempt a lot of people, especially in the startup phase of your life. But be very careful. It is okay to get that $1 million right now, but think about how many millions of dollars you will be losing if you end up building this feature and customizing your product for that particular customer alone, and like making your product complicated for the rest of the community. Yeah, product management through consensus results in a product without characters. And what is sad about products without characters is your customers will reach you immediately. Your product needs to have a character which your adopters and your early majority actually looks up to and says, you know what, I know there is this new product that has come that is kind of cooler and kind of cheaper as well, but I like these guys. I like working with these guys. If you do not have that character, you're going to lose out on those things. And finally, these were the anti-patterns that I actually wanted to talk to you guys about. But before all that, I want you guys to like think deeply if you are turning into a product manager and ask yourself this question whenever you're facing a conflict on what to do, right? Where lies your true loyalty? Is it with your customers? Is it with the company you're working for? Or is it the team you're working for? Right? Always, I believe that there's only one answer to this. It's none of the above. It's actually your product. You know, your company can come and dilute the vision that you want to build on your product. Your customers can come and like take you astray on a meandering lawyer. Your team can come and like say, you know what, that's hard to build, that's not hard to build. They can try to like change your priorities, but remember, what matters is that you have to be loyal to your product. Nothing else. Loyalty from the other three will like automatically come to you. Right. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Kaushik?
So, take us through I don't know what to say the product right now, but tell us how you structure your engineering team vis-a-vis your kind of separation. So, your engineering team versus your team that works on requirements. So, can you walk us through a day in the life of a Kistro
product manager?
Team? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he just wanted to know how a day in the life of a Kistro product manager would be, right? So Kistro has around around like 5,000, 6,000 paying customers across 120 countries. By customers, we mean companies, right? And what that means is that we are working on like all the three main time zones, which is Australia, Middle East and India, and America. So how does my day look like? I initially open up, as soon as I get to work, I initially open up what we call a wish list that we have for our customers, where people like come and like keep requesting new features. We look at the wish list items and we have a separate Excel sheet where we map our potential features that we are planning to like build against these wish list items, right? So this is day one. This is the first hour and a half. The second, we also have some associates in our team who end up setting customer interviews for us. So, and we actually end up talking to like unique customers. So, for example, we have a small mom and pop chain of frozen yogurt shops in America. We have an NGO in Australia who's like working on like getting drinking water to like the dry parts of Australia. We've got like an educational institution in South Africa. So all these unique guys, right? Because Kislo is a platform and we want to see how our platform is actually utilized. And we go on calls to actually understand how our customers use us, and we analyze what we can do better in our product in order to like make their life easier. Then we have a whole set of meetings that runs throughout the morning until midday. So we talk to engineers to see how each of our products are like shaping up, or each of our new features are shaping up. So the engineering team works in what we call squads. So we have like a lead designer, some front-end guys, some back-end guys, some database guys, and designers all sitting together, and each squad is tied to a product manager. So usually a product manager handles, we have around 6 squads working, and we have 2 product managers. So we handle around 2 or 3 squads at a time. So we finish all these meetings in the morning. The evening is individual contribution time. This is when we actually lock ourselves into a room and start looking at all the notes that we have collected so far and start like visualizing the next feature that we are building. And then we take it through what we call a feature acceptance process. First, talk to our sales team, present this, see how they feel about it. Then talk to customers who the sales team guys introduce me and see how they feel about it. Finally, talk to our internal stakeholders, which is like management and the engineering team, presenting, saying this is what we're going to do, and then documenting. So after the analysis also happens, so we sit on like BigQuery, we sit doing a lot of research.
Ask one more question, and maybe we'll take this up. So I specifically was interested in knowing how you manage. You talked about where you've done the new release. It might take up to 3 years for everybody to get onto that release. And 3 years in the B2B case, obviously, it will be extremely complicated in enterprise usage. But again, how do you manage that? How do you manage the complexity of X number of users on version 3 and X number of Y number of users on version 4, Z on?
It is crazy.
Is it 3 products? How do you manage the version?
Usually they are code bases. We hate doing it, and we've only done 2 major rewrites, and this is the 3rd rewrite, which is in works right now. It is crazy. It took us almost 2.5 years to get everyone migrated, 100% migration from the first version to the second version. But it took us only around 8 months to get around 90% of people into it. There will be these like huge customers who will say, you know what, I don't want that change. I'm okay, happy with this. And then you set a sunset and you say, you know what, 1 month's time I'm going to cut off. No feature updates whatsoever from now, and in 1 month, no support as well. So please migrate, and that's how we do it. It is crazy. It is a laborious process. It would be nice if both at an engineering level and at a project level, you never have to go through it. You continuously keep building into a single code base and keep the code base as flexible as possible so that you don't have to like jump versions.
My question is Alex here. Thanks for sharing the perspective of product manager. My questions is 2 parts. One, when you actually have a story and kind of decide the modules and features to kind of set feel your product, you can actually work with your decision making process. You do on what modules to build, what features to have, and is this, you also said that don't listen to everyone, but just listen to the product or basically product line. How does it actually work? I mean, how do you decide which one to go, which one not to go, and how does it work?
So initially, when we are building the story map, we take some time off and we actually go to a different place and we do a lot of thinking. And this thinking is based on like 3 sets of data. One is specific customer interviews that we have had in the last 12 months or so. We have recordings, we have transcripts of it. Second is usage data on our current version, on like how people are actually using us and how people want to use us. And thirdly, we do a bit of market research. We actually like go around like seeing what the market trend is, what kind of products that people are like signing up to, what are the new competitors that are like creeping up in our alley, and what our old competitors are doing, right? So these are like 3 areas that we actually go and we do elaborate documentation. We have like documents, and then we have the same set of copies, and all the 3 product managers like head off somewhere and like only think about it and like come up with like an initial story map saying, you know what, these are the things that we can do in order to like, make our product more awesome. And then we are luckily blessed with like an amazing design team which can come up with like some kind of UX in a very short time. So we actually sit with this UX team and like we create a mock of what we actually envision. So this is a collaborative exercise. We don't have like a process in place. We all sit together, we do it, and then we take it to customers. So we go up and interview with the customer saying, you know what, we actually have this feature, we actually have this product ready, and you tell me when you are ready to like migrate over to this. And we only go to our champions because these are guys who are like vocal in their support towards us, and who are the early adopters. If we have this adoption curve, these are the innovators and the early adopters for our new version. So go take it to them, and they give you a lot of feedback. I can tell you that around 40% of that story map will change initially itself. And then after that, you do your prioritization. You actually, there are like games that we play. We actually like say prioritization games, wherein we actually go and like talk to our customers and say, you know what, I'm actually going to give you this product as an add-on, and you need to give me an additional, royalty, an additional amount on these new versions. So if I'm going to charge $9 a user right now, I will be charging it $12. But you tell me what are the modules that you need immediately, and that's a great sign of like knowing which to prioritize first, which not to, because you have a bias, but these guys are like putting their money on like something, and that's a brilliant way to like prioritize as well. But lots of prioritization techniques that we have to use at the end of the day. Not just that. Yes, that does dictate to a very great extent, but we also have a strategy in place. If you realize that what our customers want, we do not want to build, and we don't want to build something else because that's where we envision our product to be, we'll not build it.
Kaushik will be around. We have 2 other speakers, so it's not fair to them also, no? So, last question. Okay.
The tools that we end up using, a lot of Excel. We use stories on board, which is a story mapping tool. We also dog food on the platform that we actually create. So we do a lot of things on our acceptance triage is actually on the platform that we already create. So we use our own product. So that is also there. And we have a lot of internal automations. For analytics, we use BigQuery by Google. And we have our own analytics engine which runs on top of it. And what else? So we have our own, just like user voice, we have our own visual software that we run for our customers. And we use mouse flow to analyze customer usage patterns if we have to. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaushik. As informed, we'll limit the questions because we have speakers after the current speaker as well. So over to Rajendran, and we'll be collecting the puzzle sheets after he's done, so we can pause there as well. Thank you.
Am I audible without the microphone?
Yeah, so let's go without.
So I think my previous speaker had it lucky because how many things can be different about product management in a startup, right? So many of the things that he said echoed very well and rather resonated with things that we do at Zoho too. But I have come up with my own collection. I have 12 points to share with you. So let me run through them today. So I was splitting it up into two parts, a 6 about who's and a 6 about how's. So basically I'm going to keep moving around, you can't record me. So the who's are basically about recruiting people, the right kind of people. Because that's probably one of the most important things a team manager is going to be tasked with. Because probably as a startup, you might start building it yourself, but over time you'll have to get your second, third, the designer, the marketer, the analyst, and so on in. So getting the right kind of people. So how are you going to locate them? And I'm going to share lessons from the way we did it at Zoho. The how is basically a process. Without getting too technical into how, because each domain is going to have a different process. Nice thumb rules to anti-patterns, like our previous speaker said. The things to keep in mind, to avoid and to embrace. So let's start with who to work with. This is something very close to my heart. So again and again in the past 22 years of Zoho's life, we have seen that there is no correlation whatsoever between paper pedigree, the degrees they come with, the gold medals, the numbers, the ranks, the scores, the grades that they come with, and their ability to work in a team. So often they never face failure. Very often they live in a competing environment all the time. They keep chasing, I am better than you, I get more marks than you, and so on. What we instead need them to do is actually collaborate in an environment at work. Because only when you collaborate in an environment, you can actually compete with the other companies who are building probably similar products. So consciously ignore paper qualifications, and when you look at interviewing them, push that resume aside and don't look for snapshots. Look for life movies. Ask them to, if they come to you and say, I am a programmer, don't put them in a sanitized environment, no internet connection, 2 hours, do this coding problem for me. Because that is not how a person codes at work. So give them a larger problem, a longer amount of time, all the coffee and the internet that he or she will want, and then see what kind of questions they ask, what kind of approaches they adopt, what order of algorithms they come up with, and so on. So that is probably more important. Hire better than yourself, all the way from Steve Jobs to Bill Gates. People have been talking about this. More and more often we get into a comfort zone where this manager that you have recruited is kind of afraid. He's a B player perhaps, and he doesn't want to hire somebody who does better than him or her. Right? Be very careful about it. Steve Jobs actually talks about it in form of A players, B players, and C players. So C players are those that fall short of expectations. B are those that meet expectations, while A players actually consistently keep going beyond your expectations. So he says when you hire A players, they will actually hire more A players to work with them. But when you have B players to do the hiring, what's going to happen is they're not going to just hire B players. A players wouldn't even be interested in working with them. They will end up hiring C players. And that's a vicious circle, a spiral downwards. So be very careful about that. In fact, 3,500 plus interviews Steve Jobs has conducted by himself. The greatest contribution he gave to Apple was not launching one of those hardware devices. It was putting that core team together, which is still around all the way from pre-97, pre-bankruptcy times. They have stuck around with him and rallied around in his cover. Guy Kawasaki wrote a book, he's ex-Apple actually. He wrote a book about the Silicon Valley way, and in which he talks about a concept called the mall test. Very interesting test. He says, whenever I am on the wall about should I, shouldn't I, everything looks good, on paper this guy is good, but I know why something is off. So he says, don't push that case completely away. Delay it past the weekend. And in the weekend, over the weekend, if you get a chance to you're window shopping somewhere and up the elevator, up the escalator comes this guy and you see that person reflected on the mall window. Think to yourself, do you immediately turn around, go approach that person and want to start an informal, unofficial conversation? Or do you silently slink away and thankfully thanking your stars that he didn't spot you, and do you go and hide? The point is trying to make here is, most of the times in a startup environment, it's not a proper black and white, official, unofficial, work, home kind of relationship. You're going to share pizzas, you're going to share stories, you're going to share your love failure stories perhaps, right? That is how close you're going to be working when you are talking about a startup environment, working over the weekend and so on. So if they don't pass the mall test, the chemistry is not going to work out for you, is what Guy Kawasaki says, and I agree. Again and again I have seen more than skill, more than even personal attitude, the way they form together as a team and the chemistry falls in place goes a very long way, because building a product is a marathon. It's not something you do like an affair and fling and finish it off and then move on to the next one. You're going to be with it probably all your life. Very few products get retired anyway. Right? So when you keep obsessing about it, this long marathon really helps. There is this movie, famous movie. I really love the scene. Anybody remember the name of the movie? World War Z is the name of the movie, and Brad Pitt. An amazing scene in this movie is where he lands up in Israel on a helicopter and he goes around the city and he sees a 70-feet wall around the city, and just outside there are zombies trying to come into the city, and inside this city, this is probably the last surviving city of humans who haven't been bitten by zombies. And he meets that counselor who is in the helicopter and asks him, hey, when all the world didn't do anything about this zombie infestation, how is it that you came up with this idea and you built this wall? This should have cost you a lot, 70-feet wall all around the city. And he says, in Israel, in our council, we have a concept called the 10th man. Okay? So the concept is, what does the 10th man do? The 10th man's role is, if all 9 of them agree to something, his job is to say, I disagree. Nothing else, nothing more, that's all. Right? If all 9 of them are unanimous about something, it's a red flag signal for him to say, hey, put your brakes and say, sorry, you can't go forward. Go back to the drawing board, think. Right? So what happened when all the world was saying there was this zombie infestation somewhere far away, we don't need to worry about it, it's going to cost us billions of dollars, so swipe it off the table. Every company, every country did that. But in this country, when all 9 of them said swipe it off, the 10th man had, by rule, to say, I disagree. What am I trying to hint at is, marry that rebel. Bring that rebel into your team. Yes, it's going to be very hard to work with such a person, but these people are typically people who haven't been given the right opportunity to bloom, the right environment to actually take root and bring out what they are, what their central purpose is. But when you get such a person working in your team, Steve Jobs was a rebel magnet, by the way. When you get somebody to work like that, you'll be able to see amazing, because you don't need shadows. You don't need people who will sit down when you sit down and who will stand up when you stand up. They are shadows. You don't need that. What you instead need is people who can bring up counterpoints, who can strike across hierarchies, who can ask you questions irrespective of how many degrees you have or how many years of experience you have. Ask that question and make you think. So those are the kind of people you need to be able to attract in your team. There's a typical graph about the large company mentality, because most colleges who manufacture these MBAs prepare people with that kind of mentality. Where one small risk, one mistake, something goes wrong, the downside is very high. The image is lost. You can't, the kind of risk-taking attitude where even if you make a world-beating product with a great risk, the gain is not much because the company's bottom line is anyway too thick. But one small wrong step and the whole world is parading you out there, dragging you along on the streets. So that kind of mentality is the safety first, no risk taking kind of mentality. On the other hand, look for people who are the risk takers, right? So they are the people where they know that the downsides of it, that I have nothing to lose. Right? I have nothing to lose, but when I make this risk, the disproportionate benefits I can get out of it, if only it clicks well for me. So people who will, see Ajit Agarkar, for example, has this 6 golden ducks record, right? He had a duck, 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 duck kind of sequence in Australia. I mean, would he even worry about what's going to happen to my next wicket? So he is the kind of guy you should bet on if you have one ball, 6 runs to be hit, right? Not a Rahul Dravid who is going to look for, can I make 99.99 100 strike rate? So get that mentality clear. There are many hierarchies. This one is one kind of dinosaur kind of hierarchy. Modern organizations try to move into this, that there's a lot of commonality and loose interaction at the horizontal level. This one is good. Facebook, like where there is no central head, you cannot really locate who is the boss here. The inmates are ruling the asylum kind of structure. I really love this kind of structure, right? So he was also referring to something. He used the word squads. He used the word squads, right? So there is actually a book by this name. McChrystal is the name of the author. He is actually from the US Army. And this man was tasked with a battalion of 2 or 3 army units where the problem was very low morale. Why? Because whenever they had a plan to attack somewhere, the people there already knew they were coming 2 days earlier. And there was so much leak of information. And before that, this was the structure. This was the army structure before that. So this man said, let me create a team of teams. And information will freely flow within the teams, but between teams in a need-to-know basis. He's written a whole book about it. I recommend that you read it. So those are the 6 points I wanted to share with you about attracting the right kind of people and holding on to them. So now let's look at some 6 approaches or day-to-day activities you can call processes. I hate that word though. So this one is actually a picture from the Valve handbook for new employees. So Valve is a very famous gaming company and Steam is from them, Half-Life was from them. So this gaming company has a very popular, very famous new employee handbook, and in that they talk about the importance they ascribe to recruiting people. So he says in that book, the CEO has written an article, and designing games is one planet, making art is one planet, building platforms, writing code, playing PUBG, all that is fine. But you know what the sun is? Hiring. I was shocked actually. He says the single most important thing anybody senior in this company can do is hiring the right kind of talent, because everything else flows out of it. And that is a very beautiful message to convey. Agile Manifesto has been around for quite some time, but I see these 3-4 sentences that I am going to read out to you as resonating, because whenever you have a doubt about, am I doing the right thing? Is this the right process? Whenever you are stuck at the, like a deer in the headlights and you're wondering, which side should I lean? There was this last slide about where is my loyalty? Is it the company? Is it the team? Is it the product? And so on. Whenever there is that, you lean towards what the Agile Manifesto tells you. You can't go wrong. So here is one dichotomy. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Always lean towards appreciating their individuality instead of saying, I'm not even going to listen to what you're saying because you're not following process. That's the best way to deflate a person's enthusiasm and energy and kick that person out of the company. Right? So always appreciate individuals and interactions. Always strive for working software rather than comprehensive documentation. Thousands and thousands and pages of documentation. When it's printed and the ink has dried, the software is already moved. So who are you trying to con here. Right? So this documentation, yes, that is the service company mentality, because most companies won't even ink a deal with you unless you file the documentation. And SLA-driven software, right? So if there is a change to be made in the software, it has to be a dotted line to a line in the documentation itself, and vice versa. Any change made in the documentation should reflect in the software. But that's a luxury you can afford to avoid. Right? So working software all the time, lean towards that rather than comprehensive documentation about something that's not completely half-baked, fully baked yet. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. He gave examples about how he listens to customers, how he sets up listening posts, ear to the ground, user voice, and so on. So always lean towards, nothing is etched in stone. It's all dynamic because customer choices themselves are changing as new dimensions are unveiled and new competitors come up with products. In fact, they did not even be in your domain. When a completely new product like Slack comes up and tries to change the game of collaboration, you might be a document creation software, but you might have to work with Slack to make synergy happen there. So constantly changing world. So don't fool yourself into contract negotiation. I have changed something, pay me this much more money. That's not the way the game works. So always lean towards customer collaboration. And responding to change over following a plan. Compasses versus maps, they say. So don't obsess over maps. Maps are static images of how the land lies and you just have to find a way through it. Compasses are dynamic. You always, wherever you are, it can tell you where you are and where to go. So focus on the compass game rather than the maps game. Respond to change rather than following a plan. So there are many ways you can actually look at an employee's contribution. Sometimes we fall into that trap of, have you shipped the code? Have you shipped the relevant stuff? This time your product had this many bugs, so I'm not going to give you a good appraisal, and so on. So don't get into that kind of trap, into the linear, single, unidimensional trap. Instead, look at technical skill, look at productivity, look at group contribution. That person by himself or herself might not have done much, but simply because of that person's presence, the group could have benefited. The group, there might be that mastery in this person, through which the group would have done much better. So look at group contribution and overall product contribution as an idea, as a feature, and so on. And stack them all up like that. Because what matters is the height of that bar, the length of the bar rather. It's not what individual box this person has contributed to. Right? One person's technical skill might be great, one person's product knowledge or contribution might be great. So you shouldn't obsess over these internal sub-bars. What you should focus on is holistically, what is this person bringing to the table, right? And lead by example. Gone are the days where we could have a manager who once upon a time used to code or design or whatever, and today he or she sits in a cabin and tries to get work done. Post-millennials have no respect for people like that. So you need to actually be at least as good as the people you are recruiting. Be in touch. See, when you are expected to be that good as a programmer, as a marketer, as a designer, as a writer, you don't have time to actually waste on documentation, waste on contracts and SLAs, waste on getting signatures in triplicate and so on. So automatically it is a self-serving positive cycle. So focus on leading by example. So even today, Mark Zuckerberg zones out and does some code. Thankfully, it doesn't appear on Facebook.com, but that mentality, that attitude really vibes with the post-millennial generation who want to work with companies like that. Always have experimental sandboxes because it's not a good environment to have one product and that one product team that works on this single product, and everything that's being written is mission critical, so you cannot really have any play, have any experimental work. So there are, for example, at Zoho, when you are in a Zoho CRM team or Zoho Mail team, every one of us can have a test machine and can run a single copy of Zoho Mail and play with it. Can fiddle with the process, fiddle with the interface, fiddle with the backend, and so on. Make it, break it, no problems, but you must have these sandboxes where you can cut your teeth, where you can learn your game. Reward results, very important. When something's shipped, when customers are happy, hold them up. They are the heroes, but also, like in a tennis match, which doesn't make you wait till the last point, this championship point is played, they appreciate every point. You can't even say if it is winning or losing, right? Federer might be losing this point. It might be Nadal on the other side who got that point. But the ovation he gets, that's what I want each of you to do it in your teams also for the effort. Because rewarding efforts is what's going to be much more frequent than just rewarding results, which is probably not even in your hands. Right? There can be something completely out of your hands which could deeply impact your results negatively. So do not tie it up to extrinsic motivations. Get intrinsic about it. So those are the 6 who's and the 6 hows. I think I have 2 more. Yes, the minimum viable product. So don't build a product like this. 1 wheel, 2 wheel, bonnet, car. Instead, look at something like this. All the time usable, all the time movable, all the time mobile. So that's how your iterations should be. Right? So anytime I take that car, I take that vehicle out, the company's product, I take it out, it should be workable. Its intent was to move me from A to B. It continues to do that. Except it was with 2 wheels, now it has 4 wheels. It didn't have air conditioning, now it has air conditioning, and so on. Apple has an amazing video called Intention. It was launched in 2013 in its WWDC conference. It's a beautiful video. I can't play it because I didn't have the connections here. But I have a written out version of it. You can enjoy that and go home and watch the video. So if everyone is busy making everything, how can anyone perfect anything? We start to confuse convenience with joy, abundance with choice. Designing something requires focus. The first thing we ask is, what do we want people to feel? Is it delight? Is it surprise? Is it love? Is it connection? Then we begin to craft around our intention. It takes time. This is the most important part. 1,000 no's for every yes. Every yes they say, behind it, only they know there's a graveyard of no's. 1,000 no's that they have said no to. Remember, they launched the iPod without a delete button. When every other music device had a file, find, delete. They launched the first laptop without a CD-ROM drive. Think about that. We simplify, we perfect, we start over until everything we touch enhances each life it touches. Only then do we sign our work. That was the message from Apple. So there is no path to happiness. So don't promise your boss, your colleagues, or your juniors that join me. This is a tough time we're going through. Some more time, we'll get some money, we'll get some customers, and it'll all be fine. End of the rainbow, pot, and all that, right? So that's not happiness. There is no path to happiness because happiness is the path. If they are with you on that journey, the interesting experiences, that adventure, the mistakes, the great people you meet, the joy, the little joys you get when you do something good and there is an internal appreciation about it, those are the things they should actually buy into. Not some remote dream far into the future which might or might not happen. Remember that. Thank you.
Any questions?
You're talking about team management, office structure of teams. Yeah, so how can I, as a product guy, how can I manage? So actually, we got to the startup and we do manage people remotely. Actually. So how, let's say I have an internship based team who is working for us for our social media marketing efforts. So how can I remotely manage them? Do you have any suggestions or tools?
Yeah. So after trying it a lot of times, we have stopped managing people. That is, it might sound funny or ridiculous, but that's the approach you should rather take. Jason Fried of 37 Signals has written an interesting book, came out a couple of years ago, called Rework, R-E:work. Recommended reading for anybody who wants to manage remote teams. Because this man is managing a team of 15 people spread across 8 countries. So he says, anytime I wake up, I know 2 of my colleagues are deep asleep across the world. So that's the way he approaches it. And there is this law called Goodhart's Law. And Goodhart's Law says, the moment you start measuring something, and I'm not able to recollect it. So the example he gives is, if you're going to say, I'm going to measure the number of nails you manufacture to all these people working in the nail factory, they're going to come to you with microscopic nails, thousands of them. What you actually need is a nail like this, right? How many nails are you manufacturing is what I'm going to measure. So they're going to come to you with microscopic nails, thousands of them, because they know that they are going to be measured by number. Then you change around and say, I am going to measure by the weight of nails to manufacture. They'll come with this large ship nails, right? 4 of them. Because neither of them is what you need. What you need is nails like these. So what he's trying to hint at is, do not obsess over measuring things. Measuring the wrong things is very easy. When did you come in? When did you go out? How many lines of code did you write? Is easy. How beautiful was the icon you designed? How viral is the campaign you're going to be working on? Can you measure these just by internal data points? You cannot. So the book, the law, and Zoho, all of us gravitate towards align your teammates with the purpose that you have, and then let them free, let them work their magic. So I wouldn't want you to go around managing remote teams. That's all. You will lose your hair. Yeah.
Most of the time, actually, so I had them and we set the expectations, okay, go ahead and design and use team questionnaire.
Correct.
But as a remote team, right, so we just keep it, okay, they're working on it.
Yeah.
But,
So take Zoho's own example. The Zoho CEO lives in the US, right? He gives day-to-day interactions with us, he has. But they are not hand-me-downs, they are not diktats. They are discussions. They are collaborations over video chat or audio chat about how things are going, right? He lives there and the whole company works out of India. He comes only once in 4 or 5 months. We get work done. Except the alignment aspect. The alignment is very important.
One final. So the hiring part, I think you mentioned a lot of importance needs to be happened in the hiring. So what are the best practices you follow in hiring?
Yeah, so like I very briefly mentioned, I said snapshot versus movie, right? So if somebody tells me that they are a writer, once upon a time we used to have a essay writing question paper. So we'll ask them to spot mistakes, we'll ask them to fill up some simple English sentences, and we'll give them a scenario. Can you sell this product, right? There is a teddy bear shaped water dispenser. How will you sell it? Something like that, right? So used to be the approach. But today we are realizing that that is not the way it should actually be evaluated. If a person is really passionate about writing, we should ask them, show me your blog. I'll go back to the oldest blog post and spend time reading it. It might be bad English because you learnt over time. Let me see how much you have learnt over time. Right? Show me your poetry you wrote in 6th standard. A girl came up with it. She said, I have been writing all my life. Here is my poetry. I wrote in 6th standard. Very nice, rhyming. Sun and moon, come back soon. Things like that. But when you resonate with a person's history, if it is a programmer, we ask their HackerRank score. How much have you contributed to GitHub? How many answers? How many questions have you asked in Stack Overflow? These things you cannot cheat. These things will come out only if you have been truly obsessed and passionate about it. It takes time. Which is why I said hiring is the most important job. Don't say it takes too much time. That's what you're here for. Yeah? Thank you.
Thank you, Rajendran. So before we call upon Nirmal, we'll go around and collect the puzzle sheets. If you can just hand it over to us, whoever has it right now, we'll just pick it up. 2 minutes is all it will take. So our final speaker for the evening is Nirmal. So over to him.
Hi everyone. He mentioned about how difficult it was to speak after the first speaker. So I think they have covered like so much, and they both came from a large company, I would say. But so I basically come from a startup background. So I used to run a couple of startups earlier. So even though it was unsuccessful, there were like quite learnings that really helped me a lot, both in terms of understanding the business, the processes related to it, and I mean it's very hard to even quantify many such learnings. So today's topic is product management. So I would like to have it more, the session to be more interactive. So who's a product manager? What does a product manager do? Quick answers. I mean, you have attended 2 sessions before this. I expect more answers.
I'm product manager for Google.
Sorry? Oh, okay.
It's a co-working space for it. So we are providing a cost-effective space for startups.
Okay, so what does a product manager do? Quick answers, please. Identify features. Okay. So maybe we'll scope down to in startups. I think many people are from startup backgrounds. So there are plenty of terms. Let's say maybe there are some on the screen itself. So people call it as mini CEO, but there are both. It can be taken in a positive sense, and sometimes it is wrong. I mean, definitely wrong. Definitely, you are not the CEO of the product. So either you have a CEO of the business who takes decision. Definitely, the scope of the product turns a lot, and in the initial days till a product market fit happens, there's like so many changes. Any other things that you think or the functions of a product manager? What do you do in real time? Somebody asked what was the other person do day in, day out. So many times he has to manage his team. Like you don't have anybody under you. Basically, you are managing a team, and you will have to collaborate and motivate each person that whatever you decided or whatever is the scope of the product is the right scope. So it's the right features. So there is so much in negotiation that needs to happen. So first you need to believe that the product that you are building is correct for the market, correct for the user, and definitely the user is going to be the user is going to be benefited by your product. Unless you have all these things convinced, you can't even operate as a product manager. So just some couple of slides about. Oh, you are changing it. Okay. Can you go to the slide? Back. So just so I have a coding background. I love building new products. I love participating in hackathons, and so these are the two companies that I built. So one was on the education space, other was on augmented reality for real estate, and then so my work experience. So I'm going to talk much from my past experience. So so one is MatchKit. So it is an AI-based company. So provide solutions for brands, basically through computer vision and AI. Like let's say you take a photo of a particular product. So I like this T-shirt, so I just click a photo of it, so I can matching clothing online. So that is one of the solution. And let's say you can generate model images. Let's say you have a product, so you want to see how it looks on a different person. So you can generate model images like that, which e-commerce companies can integrate into the platform. So that's what we were doing at MatchKit. So now I'm with CONX, where we have advertising solutions. We have a couple of products related to that. So just to give you a background, and so these are some of the achievements that we did. Next. So today we started. So we'll see about what is startups. We discussed that. Then about the product manager. Then we'll discuss more about the case studies, like some examples. So both the speakers gave so much information about how they were doing in that company and what are all general things to do. So we'll go on a case-by-case basis, like what do you do in a particular scenario, like how that company did, and how we can learn from others' mistakes. And what's the difference between a product management in a large company and what you do in a very small company, or when you are even running your own company. So, so do you know what's the major reason for a startup to fail? What's the top most reason for it to fail?
The market is not
Okay. Yeah, so that's the topmost reason why a startup fails. So, in the entrepreneur's mind, so he is really fascinated about a particular problem and he has built a solution for it. But many a times, and this is happening much in the startup environment, so you convince yourself that this is the solution that you want to build for the company, and you discuss with your team, everyone gives their own thoughts, but you end up building a product that nobody wants. So many times people, they think that, or at least in the startup, they think having a competitor, then this is, let's change the solution, just change the offering. So now we are the only people who are offering this solution. But when you do that, many times you will find you are in the spot where you have built something but nobody needs that. So in these scenarios, like having competition really works. So you're able to prove that you are better than the others. So but for these particular reasons. So that's the top number one reason. Second is hiring poorly. So these are the top two reasons. So and product manager, they need to be aware of both actually. So the team needs to be very well structured or very well groomed. So even if you are in startups, you are in a position where you don't really have a luxury. So you start with a very good co-founder maybe, but the initial team, like whoever you have hired, so you need to make the best out of the people that you have. So keeping the team informed and on the same page, like what your product vision is, that's very important for any startup. So what's the goal of your solution? So if you question each one of your team, and if each person is giving you a different answer, then that's a very bad start. So at least your team should be 100%, should have enough clarity on the product. So who is going to use it? Why is he going to use it? Next. So as a product manager, you lie in this within this three circle. So customer, business, and technology. So you are going to combine all three and going to give a very usable solution for your target customer. And I would say that you start with the business. So first you should have enough clarity on what the problem is. So as Kaushik earlier mentioned, so the business or the what is the problem that they are facing is critical. Rather than you can ask for solutions, but definitely you should not start with that or you should not end with that. So focusing more on the problem as such and discussing with your team on what are all the various ways in which it can be solved. Next. So we'll dig deeper into requirements. So this is one funny comic. So you start with product requirements. You list like so many items in the list, and then you end up doing really a bad job. So taking a very important problem at first, and you need to do this in an iterative method. So you start with a very large problem. So what's the most thing that the customer is ready to pay for? So that you can start with, because it already acknowledges that the problem is worth solving. So you start with that, and you define your roadmap. So like what all things you are going to do next, and so next slide. And roadmap or the features, it should not look like this. Let's see like how many features we can include more on it. So this is definitely a very good example. So we have been using like remotes like this with too many buttons, and like how many buttons we even use in a let's say even in a month's time or a year's time. It's very less. And one way we could tackle this is identify like how useful it will be for the customer and to constantly measure it. So measurement is a very critical aspect, and many times, and when you are in startups, so you are in a hurry of launching it soon or launching it faster because your total runway is going to be less. But still identifying the major items and measuring that, it should be in your scope. So there are like so many different things. So like how do you do? So use your common sense. So it's not very common anymore, but still you have to try for it and do that. Next. So this is one of the approaches that I would say is very so whether it's a startup or it's a specific product. So this way you identify the most important things first. So start with the why. Why are you solving an issue? Why? And then the way that you can do is there are business model canvas and lean canvas. So it applies so more for the startups. So you understand like the various components of the business, and it gives a very structured way to operate it. So next is defining a higher level features and getting to know more about the product roadmap, like what is going to go first and the next. And the next item is getting into more details, like let's say you consider one of the features and what are all the various tasks that needs to be done to get the feature out. So the features, it needs to be a more usable solution, and at every feature is released, you should be able to have a usable solution. That we saw an example earlier. So let's take a case of an Uber app. So I'm sure like everyone would have tried the Uber app. So it's very clear that when you open an app, so you just define like where do you want to go and which kind of service, is it a Uber Go or an Excel or anything. So there you can easily understand. But it was not the case like before. So before, let's say you tried booking something, so the number of steps that you do for booking a cab or booking something else is very complicated. So here the why refers to about the overall objective of the product, and how the next step is how you are going to build. Is it going to be easy to use, elegant UI? And many times we forget about the point that it should include the scope for improvement. So let's say you start with a very simple product, but then after you have a major feature, so you want to restructure most of your solution. So that's a very bad way to do. And the same way, you should not be over-engineering at your step. So let's say you want to include every new thing that's going to be built for the future. So that will be an over-engineering or overkill for the product. So next is, so there are like so many things that can be measured, and you should be measuring the right one. So let's say you want to understand like how people are using the Uber. So what are all the items that you will measure? So let's say you are a product manager for Uber. Like what all things you will measure? Any answers? How much time does each user take to book a cab? Anything else? How many people drop at maybe each step? So for that so first is the flow in which a successful booking, what is the flow that you take? So that's definitely a good thing to track. So once you have it, and let's say you identify that there are so many drops that are happening for an X reason, so that will help us identify it. And let's say there are, let's say for booking a pool, there are different features in the app. Like so we can identify that whether they are checking the price and then they are leaving, or so all those different flows within the app. First, the flows needs to be identified, and how you can measure at each step. So that needs to be done. And third, keeping a regular eye. Let's say you make a release for your application and something got hit. So those needs to be reviewed at every step. So I assume that most of the people here are going to be from developing a web product. So for a web product, like what are all the various or critical touch points? So one is regarding the marketing. Like so for any product, the marketing landing page is very critical. And the next, like how do you onboard the users? And then the third is, let's say the user has already onboarded and signed up. Like how are they getting engaged in the process? Like how are they using the solution? And finally is the conversions. So for the marketing landing page, so you need to be very aware, or you need to have a clear understanding about so what is the goal. So you need the user to sign up, or you need the user to buy a product. So those things have to be very clear. And for a new user, so what are all the various things that he's going to look for? So those two needs to be clear on the landing page. And so the second item is the user onboarding flow. So here I have a couple of examples, like how a user onboarding flow should be. So do you have any suggestions? So a new user has signed up. So what is the next step? So he has to use your application, right? But there needs to be some kind of an tutoring procedure, or you need to teach him like what are the solutions that you have. So what are all the various strategies that you can adopt? So what would you do?
Show a video of how things work.
Show the video of how things work. Yeah.
So, like, just one, right? You do the fitness here, you do the payment here, you do
So the other option is, so you have on-screen hovers or on-screen pop-ups saying this is here you find these solutions, here you have these options. So that's another way. So Asana, I mean, I really love the product, but let's say you have signed up. So the first thing that they ask you is to go and complete your process. Go to your email and check this. So I definitely see this as one way of, I mean, many users can drop at that point. So I'm sure Asana would have tracked it. I'm not sure if that's the current way in which even happening. But so you can avoid such happenings. Like let's say you want to complete the registration process, it's fine. So they can log in with the same thing, but you can still mark the email as an is not verified, and you can disable some of the features within your solution, but not allowing the user to sign up or log in. That's a place where people can drop off. Next slide. So the other way Evernote does is, so when you are creating an account, they are showing you a tour of slides like what are all the various options within the solution. So here you expect the user to go to each slide, or the other example was using a video to even show what all the features of the product is. So next slide. So there are some pros and cons to each approach. So you need to take a very informed decision like what it works for your customers. So one thing that I really like about Basecamp is, so after you signed up, they give you a dummy project with all these items. So it's very self-explanatory, and you can see the various tips. So sometimes the pop-ups around the solution, it even frustrates the user, like you need to close each one and move to the next. So this way is less intrusive for the customer, and it gives you the whatever things are required, and it shows like what are all the various options. So you can see that 3 comments. So it means that each item can be commented, and how you can create a new project and what are all inside it. So this is a very interesting way in which Basecamp has solved this user onboarding issue. Next slide. So next is user engagement. So for any product, there is going to be like so many objectives in for you. So for LinkedIn, one of the major objectives is getting everyone fill their details. So unless everyone fills their details, unless there are like so many interesting profiles on LinkedIn, it's not going to help anyone. So nobody is going to even log into LinkedIn to see other people's profile because everything is empty. So one interesting way in which they solved is through gamification. So a very simple feedback that gave us a very huge uptick in number of pages or number of profiles getting updated properly. So this is notification, a small notification on the right side saying only 25% of your profile is completed. So that gives a visual feedback to the user, and whenever he sees that something is not done, and it's so the innate response within everyone is making us to do it, making it to complete it, and it gets even interesting. Let's say it says that when you add your question, so this increased by 15%. So it's just not the visual feedback alone, more recommendations that makes it the work very simpler. So each time you log in, maybe at least you have clicked on one of those items, adding a question, adding your education, and let's say over time, so the fill rate or the completion rate increases. And definitely after you launch such a feature, so you need to track it. Unless you do that, you will not know whether it has positively impacted or negatively impacted. So the same gamified the completion bar that helps like online surveys a lot. So many times you see the online surveys, but many people we don't finish it. And this was a similar approach that was taken. in many of the surveys to increase the completion rate. Next is Dropbox. So Dropbox had a very interesting, you can even call it as an user onboarding flow, and it also included user engagement features. So you log in, and then there are 6 things that you need to do. So each time you do, you get the complete button, and visually for people to even see this, they have completed. It's a very small reward that they take, and it motivates them to do the next item. And when you do it, some kind of a small task, and you are getting rewarded with getting 125 MB or 1 GB. So it's a very interesting way. So they have tied it with that product. So that product is giving space to the users. So they have gamified some of the elements, and they are attaching it back to the product. Similarly, like for each of your solution, that could be like something that can reward back to the users. Let's say they want to share it to Facebook, or they want to share it with some expectation that you have, something that you want your users to do. And you can think about interesting ways in which you can get it done. So both the user is benefited and you are benefited. Right. Next. So, but given this as a context, you can't just gamify everything, and you can't give badges, or you can't expect people to do just because something is gamified. So the goals has to be meaningful, and you need to have some kind of a positive reward for the user. Next. So next, let's look at what kind of failures or what things that we can learn from past mistakes. So I'm not sure like how many people would have even tried a Windows mobile, but I happen to be one of our very early customers. So I had not this solution, but a similar one that was powered by Windows 6.2. So it had a start button. When you click on the start button, there will be a very similar drop down like how it was there on Windows XP or even the earlier versions, Windows 95. Start button, it shows programs, accessories, everything. So it had a very similar UI. So this is a very good example of how something should not be done. So they just had all their engineers in Microsoft. Probably they wanted to launch a mobile OS. So they just customized everything. They just made it to run on a mobile device, and they got it. And Apple gave a very good response of how something should be done, and that marked a start of a failure for Microsoft on the mobile. And then they had to revamp, or the whole strategy was different. But so you need to start thinking from you should not think from a developer perspective or whatever you already have and how you are going to migrate it to a new platform. So instead you should start with fresh eyes. So this is the real estate of a mobile device. What are all the operations that you want the user to do, and how you will compartmentalize, and how you will organize things into various sections, and you need to do that. Then, so there's an example of Kodak. So Kodak was a very successful company in the photography business. So their major revenue came from not just the films, but printing the photographic papers. So at one point of time, like 75% of the revenue came from selling these photographic papers, like which you use for printing the photos. And I'm not sure if many of you are aware that. So the first digital camera was invented by a person in Kodak. That happened in 1975. So even though, they were a market leader in photographic business, and their research team had founded the digital camera. So they failed to, their leadership team and their management team failed to recognize that. So things are going to change after one point. So things are becoming digital, and there's definitely there is a major revolution that's going to happen on the digital space. So it was totally missed by Kodak, and the upper management team even identified it as an potential way that will disrupt his own organization. So most of the company, since it had revenue from the photographic papers, were related to the chemicals and printing these papers. So they saw it as a threat, but if you ignore it as a threat, then definitely that can be done by your competitor, and they can outrun you. So staying up to date with the market, identifying a potential threats to your own product. So that is, if you do it yourself, then you are at liberty to even improvise your product. Otherwise, so anybody else can build a product that will outrun you. So then I would say lack of agility. So the first two examples were around lack of vision and lack of user-centric approach. So that led to the fail of Windows OS. There is another vertical that we can focus on lack of agility. So I'm not sure like how many people are aware of social network called Orkut. So it was even released a couple of weeks earlier than Facebook. So both actually started in 2007 or 8. I'm not able to recollect, but both of them launched in a very similar time frame. But we can definitely see that Facebook only survived. So Orkut was shut down a few years back. The major reason that I see is lack of agility. So I started using Facebook back from 2007. I could see that Facebook released like so many features. That could be like some of the features was not very good, but they kept tracking it very often. They released even if it's a small feature, they released it and they kept improving it. But Orkut on the other hand, so the number of new features or the number of changes that happened, it was very limited on the initial period. Maybe one reason is it was handled by Google and it was a very big company and it was difficult for them to convince the features. But Facebook, on the other hand, it was a startup and it was able to perform in a very good pace and it built new features and tested it regularly with the users. So that's why I keep pushing for measuring the right things, because what gets measured gets managed. So if you don't even know like something is happening, you can't even understand out of it, or you can't even improve that. Next. So let's see the difference between a large company and a startup. So many large companies, as the previous speaker showed an example, like the cost of something going wrong, it's pretty high. So that can impact brand and brand. So most of the times you end up making very sure items. So the room for experimenting is limited, and whereas if you consider startups, you have the ability to try out, build new features, talk to each of your users or each of your potential user, and you can be very elastic compared to a large company. So they have to operate under so many restrictions, and it might take a very long time to even decide upon something. So the documentation that go with each feature or each discussion, so it takes long time in a large company. So one thing regarding coordination and communication. So you can consider startups as the initial dates. So you meet often, you get more feedback. Whereas weddings can be considered as a large company, the communication that happens after you get married. Next. So as I started my presentation with, the role of the product manager is picking something and then convincing everyone else that is right. But to do that, even you should be first convinced of that. So any questions? Yeah, it's a good question. Going for a pivot, or this is a most used term. So if let's say you are in a startup, you build something, and you want to identify that something is not working, and when do you want to change your solution? So here it's going to entirely depend on your product and your market. So, but the reasons that you take for pivoting, it should be very vital. Like, have you discussed with enough of the customers? Maybe the first customer that you went with, so he did not face the issue that, or he did not want the solution that you offered. So you need to know that you have captured your right audience, and you got a very true feedback. Sometimes people they just give you something, but it may not be the actual reason. So if somebody is worth paying for, maybe the questions that you can ask for is, they don't want XYZ features, but they are saying that I want this feature. So now you need to think whether you want to change your product from doing X and going for Y. There, if the person is ready to pay for Y, then it's a validation that at least that requirement is valid enough. But I mean, this I faced in in my startup. So I built a very fancy product like in augmented reality, and we went to a real estate company. So they tried it. They saw it as a more of a nice to have feature. So the solution was, so you can look at the property in a 3D environment. You can let's say you go visit a property. You can see like how the apartment will look like, how you can get a deep dive into it. So all these things were possible in AR and virtual reality, augmented reality and virtual reality. So there the problem that we faced was, so it was a nice to have feature. So it did not, there was not a clear market need for it. Hence they said, why don't you make these changes? So we want the 3D rendering to be more perfect. So right now, since it's running on a mobile environment, so we can notice some lag. So these are some of the comments that we got from the market. But the actual problem was, even if I made those changes, and we spent like a solid 1 year in making all these changes, making the product more usable, more compelling for the customer. But still, we were unable to sign a contract. We were unable to get money from them. But then when we had a real discussion with the sales team, so we identified that one of the major problem is their sales team, how good they are following up with their customers. So as a management, they were not sure. So they get like plenty of leads daily, but these sales people have to follow up with them. So let's say that guy would have told, I'm driving, why don't you call me like 1 hour back, 1 hour later? But we are not sure whether the salesperson called them or not. So these are all the real problem that they were facing was tracking their sales force. So are they making the follow-ups properly, or are they calling them? Then when we built a very simple POC in a weekend that allows them, all the sales force to install a mobile app, and that mobile app tracks all their phone calls. So we gave all the leads on their phone, they can just tap them and call them. So it's a very simple CRM, but it was more tailored for the real estate people and made it very easy to use. So this we were able to quickly whip up a POC in a weekend, and the real estate company, they signed up without even the actual product. So that was the power of pivoting. But you need to be sure that after you pivot, you are addressing the right audience, or you are the solution has turned for the right reasons. Or else you will get plenty of feedback from each person. So you should be able to validate the feedback and make a decision out of it. Did it answer your question? Any other questions? Sorry?
How do you fix the team count? Let's say to achieve this milestone, need only 5%.
So you should not be looking at the number of people for that. So there are some features for it. So definitely, if it involves front end, so that you need one front end developer and one back end developer, and probably one person to test it, QA. So apart from that, like unless you have a specific need, so you should not be pulling any extra resource into the project or extra resource for that particular engagement. So it doesn't matter like whether you have 5 people or 2 people, as long as the work can be done by those resources. So you should not be adding extra resources just for the namesake. Was that your question or? Yeah, so even from my...
So we do multiple roles.
Correct.
sometimes I'm doing marketing, sometimes I'm doing business, sometimes I'm doing taking partnership approach. So I'm just thinking, can I, as a product guy, your experience, have you faced a similar experience of different roles, playing multiple roles, same data? So I'm just
So both in my current startup, both in my current company and my previous company, so they both were well funded and we were in a very good shape. But still, there were like you have resource constraints. So no matter like how big you are, you will definitely have resource constraints. The same resources will be working on a couple of other products or a couple of other projects. So you need to keep your the team lean. So you need only the resources that you want, and you should ensure that all the like items like so you have the feature is very complete in your mind first, and then it needs to be documented so that the other resources time doesn't get wasted. So if they come in, they just need to understand the solution and they have to build it. Okay, so if you have all these requirements very clear on your mind, so the next step is convincing the resource this is the right solution for it. So this definitely happens in startups. So there is a resource and there are two items that he is working. Okay, and the person will definitely go towards like whatever he feels better to do it, and you have tough time managing it. So as a product manager, you will have to negotiate and you have to convince the resource that this is a priority and this needs to be done immediately. And as a PM, you need to be more flexible. Like there are like n number of items to be done, and so you should have your user story written very clearly with all the validations and everything that will be required for it. So once he starts doing, maybe he could have a couple of questions, but all those questions should be answered in your story. Or else he will start with the solution, and then there will be like X number of items that will come up. What should you do in this particular flow? What will happen if this feature is tried by somebody else for which it's not working? So you can address all those answers by yourself, so that your resources time will be limited. They can come and develop it. They can fix it. Any questions? Any further questions?
Thank you, Nirmal. So before we close, we would like to announce the puzzle winners. Do we have Jagdish Kumar over here? Jagdish Kumar, your number ends with 47. 747 is the last three numbers. Srinivasan, do we have Srinivasan over here? So these people are the puzzle sheet winners. So a round of applause, please. Do we have Naveen? Naveen with 362 as your last number. Naveen. Do we have Sham? 1577. Superab. That's it. So we had 5, but we ended up only giving to 2. So yeah. Thank you guys, thank you for coming today, for sparing time and being a very patient audience. A special thank you to you speakers. So Rajendran had to leave and Nirmal over there. So if any of you want to talk to the speakers right now, you can ask them all the questions. They are there around. And in case you want to reach out to Rajendran, I have his cards. You can just take it from me and you can reach out to him. A special thank you to SmartWorks, our venue partner, and as well as Startup Byte, our outreach partner. And if any of you all are looking for a payment gateway, we'll be happy to help you out. Please come and talk to us. And thank you all once again. We have rolls and refreshments for you on the side. Thank you. That's it.